You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, nutrition, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere, anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your hosts, Dr. Justin Marchigiani and Barris Harvey, as they answer your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Welcome back to Beyond Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Justin Marchigiani here. Barris Harvey will not be here today, but we have an awesome guest in our studio, Mary Vance, NC. Mary is a certified nutritional consultant through Bauman College. She's also gone through Dr. Daniel Kalish's functional medicine program, and Mary's been working with patients, I want to say, for the last 5 to 10 years, Mary?
It's actually been almost 10 years now. I finished school in 2006, but started kind of mentoring and working with people around 2005-ish, so almost 10 years, yeah.
Wow, that's great. Well, I would love for you to be able to share your story, kind of how you got into the health field with our listeners.
Sure, and you can read kind of more detailed information on my site, which is Mary Vance NC, like nutritionconsultant.com, but the short story is that I grew up an animal lover and was raising and training show horses and dogs. And I attended some animal rights workshops and learned about the really deplorable conditions behind factory farming. And that really horrified me. So I became a vegetarian, and I was about 15, and I lived essentially on rice and ramen noodles, and I became severely anemic.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, they were delicious, but I became really severely anemic. And that was kind of the first connection I made that, wow, what you eat really dictates the status of your health. And to, now, since you and I are working with clients and patients all the time, it's kind of a no-brainer for us. But I think a lot of people still don't really make that connection. And so that's what really hit home for me. And I started really studying how to be a healthy vegetarian, if there is such a thing. And I just read everything I could get my hands on. I was really interested in the connection between nutrition and health. But then I was, of course, eating a lot of soy and thought that I was super healthy because I was vegetarian. And all of the processed soy food obviously kind of messed up my hormones and thyroid. And that's when I really kind of started pursuing this as a career and went back to school and got my education and training, and then, just learned how to rebalance my hormones on my own. And then it all kind of took off from there.
Wow, that's great. Now, because you mentioned animals, I'm going to go into it. I got a scratch from my cat maybe 4 days ago, and it's kind of swollen up. And I've done some research. It's a Bartonella infection.
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
actually treating it right now with some herbs, with silver, with noni, with neem, cordyceps, a couple herbal formulas, and it's actually going down really nicely. So I may get to avoid the antibiotics. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I want to keep my gut flora as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
But I know you have experience working with a lot of people with gut infections. And I'm just curious, people that have animals, do you see a lot of people that are around animals come up with infections?
That's a really interesting question, because one of my closest friends is a naturalist and works with tons of animals, and his was the worst parasite test I ever saw.
Gosh.
Riddled with stuff and has a lot of GI issues. And yes, actually, one of the more common things I see, and I know you do too, is really H. pylori. And then if you test one person, if they, have a partner, you always want to run a test on the partner, and 9 times out of 10, the partner comes up with it too. So aside from animals, the moral of the story is check your partners as well.
Oh, absolutely. My cat gave my fiance a cryptosporidium infection.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And speaking of cats, are you familiar with toxoplasmosis?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's an infection that literally changes the person's brain chemistry to I think actually like urine, like the cat urine.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy that it can change your urges and kind of desires around something like that? Isn't that crazy?
That's really scary. I think pigeons carry that too.
Yeah, exactly. So when you deal with a lot of these people that have chronic infections, what's the best way to do it? Do you find going out, knocking out the infection right away tends to be the best thing? Or is there some type of foundation that has to be worked on with these patients before they get into the infections?
Well, that's a really good question too. And as you know, kind of my favorite repeatable mantra that I tell everyone is that there's never a one-size-fits-all approach with any of this stuff. So if someone comes to you and they have a bunch of different gut infections or pathogenic infections or parasites going on, I mean, sometimes if they're also super toxic, their liver isn't working properly because they're super overwhelmed with all the toxins that are emitted due to these gut infections, and they're not digesting well, and that creates kind of a toxic environment. Then if you give them herbs or even sometimes antibiotics or whatever, if they have a really severe infection, then that can overwhelm their detox system and overwhelm them to the point where they crash and feel incredibly ill. And
Right.
if their adrenals aren't supported. So it's really important to make sure that, whoever you're working with has, their detox channels are working properly and they're not super stressed out and their adrenals are kind of working before you can really knock out a lot of the GI piece, and make sure that their diet is pretty stable too. I mean, don't you find that kind of in your practice too?
Yeah, I mean, I find that a lot of people, well, for instance, a lot of toxins are eliminated via the hepatobiliary channel system. So if your gut is backed up, then when your liver and gallbladder dump all this stuff up, you're just going to reabsorb it. So
Totally.
definitely making sure like digestion's there, transit time's there, getting rid of dysbiosis and SIBO,
Yeah.
that's like I find really important.
Yeah, SIBO, it's so funny because all of a sudden you hear about SIBO everywhere, and it seemed like years ago no one was really talking about it.
Yeah.
And now I see it, it's a really common cause of constipation, and almost everyone I'm working with that has GI problems has a tendency towards constipation. And of course that makes, detox issues much worse if you're backed up. But SIBO is really huge right now. I see a lot of those cases.
And what's your opinion with SIBO? Because I find you have some patients that it's just SIBO that's causing the problem, and then you have other patients where SIBO's kind of a sign of a deeper infection that's like underneath, and that's kind of like making the outer environment in the gut like more, dysbiotic, if you will. So what's your take? Are you seeing more just SIBO being the problem, or SIBO and other infections?
Right now, well, I find that with Candida most often.
Yeah.
Like you always see yeast as kind of a secondary
Candida, right.
infection to other stuff. And it seems that way with SIBO as well. Because, obviously the gut terrain is totally altered with these infections, and then it causes these secondary infections to crop up. But what's kind of baffling to me right now, I don't know if you've come across this, but I'll have people that go to their doctors and get, breath tests for SIBO, and they come back negative, but they still have all the signs. And then they start eating, avoiding the FODMAPs and kind of addressing that and feel better. So I wonder, what do you think about kind of the accuracy of those breath tests?
Oh, basically, we're on the exact same page. I tell my patients, one, if we see it in the stool test, that's great. But if they see any resolution of going on a low FODMAP diet and their gas and bloating improves, that's diagnostic to me.
Totally, yeah.
And then also, if adding in a little bit of resistant starch makes the problem worse, I tell them it's like throwing a rock in a beehive, and that's diagnostic for SIBO in my ball game as well, because some of these tests can be expensive. So if we can do objective/subjective testing where we add these things in there and we see if symptoms go one way or the other, that can be huge at moving forward and knowing that we have this issue.
Yeah, and so do you just use the Metametrics test to see if there's an overgrowth of good bacteria, and that's how you use stool testing to diagnose SIBO?
Yeah, like that, or like if you're doing a 401H from BioHealth, you'll see like Enterobacter, or you'll see Citrobacter and things like that up in the abundancy of the gut bacteria. So you can see it that way too.
Okay.
And then sometimes just in a breath test, I mean, you'll see it more with H. pylori, but I've been just doing the FODMAP thing, and that thing's really diagnostic for patients.
I think so too. Yeah, exactly. And it also, if that works right away off the bat, it kind of saves some people money if they can't afford to do a stool test right away. So
yeah, and you right now you're doing a lot of stuff with detoxification. I think you have an ebook and a specific product on your website that you're really kind of putting out there right now. Can you tell us more about that detoxification product?
Yeah. So I wrote a book called 3 Weeks to Vitality. And my main really goal for writing this book is that one of my colleagues and I used to teach detox workshops, which were really fun. And we would do them right before spring and right before fall, because those are kind of the ideal times. According to traditional Chinese medicine, that's when the liver and large intestine are the most active, and the weather's warm, and those are the best times to detox. But one of my main things in teaching these workshops, and I noticed, was that people were doing just these crazy fad cleanses that were really unhealthy, and using, drinking all kinds of stuff and doing the master cleanse for 3 weeks. And if, some people can feel great doing some juice fasting, but again, if you have underlying hypoglycemia or some other types of issues going on, then that can, again, be really kind of dangerous. And a lot of people have ended up in the hospital from doing the master cleanse because it severely alters their electrolyte levels. And so I kind of wanted to educate people on just using food and herbs for safe, holistic detoxification. And that's kind of the basis of my book. It gives you a 3-week plan. And, week 1 is the pre-cleanse, where you're kind of cleaning up your diet and getting rid of all the junk like gluten and dairy and potential food allergens and soy foods.
Yeah.
And so the other benefit of it, aside from all the education that I kind of provide and a guideline to this 21-day program, is that it's also a great way to test yourself for food allergies, by eliminating potential allergenic foods for a period of time and then adding them back in at the end. You can tell, if you start to get symptoms that you might have food allergy issues going on. And same thing with coffee and alcohol. A lot of people are drinking coffee every morning and drinking wine at night, and they don't realize the impact that has until they get rid of it. And then, it helps them really identify which habits are not serving them well.
Yeah, that's I think you said some really important things there. Now, you talk about detoxification. So you're kind of eliminating a lot of the environmental stuff, a lot of the dietary stressors that are coming in your body. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. So because our environment is so toxic these days, it's really scary. A lot of people say, oh, our liver is our own natural detoxifier, and you'll hear naysayers basically saying you don't need to do a detox because your liver does that for you. But obviously, we're bombarded with so many toxins, and if, like we've been talking about, if your gut's not working properly, if there are other factors going on, we have both endogenous toxins, internal and then external. So just by, getting rid of all the junky stuff that you're eating for 21 days and really there are foods that you can eat to support your liver and herbs you can take, and, kind of healing elixirs you can drink to really support liver detox. So yeah, definitely what you're intaking day to day is really important for that, but also just kind of making over your life. That's kind of the whole holistic model, right? Is that we identify not only just what we're eating, but our lifestyle and stress and sleep and all those other factors involved too, and kind of look at, what are some toxic patterns in your life that aren't serving you well. And, and that's kind of the true path for healing, is really looking at all the factors, not just, focusing on just diet or just,
Right.
a protocol, that they're, addressing all those factors for health.
Right. And I think a lot of cleanses out there, they miss the internal toxins. You said endotoxins or internal toxins. Endogenous was the word you used.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important because a lot of infections, like, for instance, we have H. pylori or bacterial issues, we're going to see endotoxin, which is hepatotoxic. We see a compound known as lithocholic acid, which is produced by SIBO. We see mycotoxins, which are produced by fungus. So how important, like, for instance, if we do this awesome cleanse and we give all of these nice nutrients and herbs, if we don't get rid of these infections, though, we're not really getting to the root. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, totally. And, obviously this cleanse is just designed for people to be able to do this at home. But I do get a lot of emails from people that say, yeah, I felt better by cleaning up my diet, but I still don't feel great. Then that's a sign that there's, something else going on that you have to test for. And so, yeah, that's one of the major issues is, people have adrenal fatigue and they're not going to totally get better until you really resolve some of these underlying other factors that might be going on that are a huge stress on the body.
So what do you think the 3 habits, just what do you, out of your experience seeing thousands of patients, what are the 3 biggest habits that are putting stress on our detoxification systems?
Well, the biggest one, I think, and that you probably agree with, I wouldn't say necessarily on the detox system in general, but one of the biggest things that people don't realize that's just a factor for health is sleep. I mean, we're so programmed in our society that if we sleep 8 to 10 hours a night, then we're lazy and we're not productive. And, I was just reading an article the other day that said, our ancestors were sleeping, 10 to 12, sometimes more hours a night. And we've gradually whittled that down. And that's one of the gateway first rungs in the ladder for stress, which causes inflammation, which, then you're kind of off and running because that's how the disease state begins. So sleep is a huge one. And then for detox, a lot of it is really focusing on cleaning up your products, things that you're slathering on your skin and chemical filled cleaning products that you're inhaling when you're cleaning your house. And, there's just so many chemicals that are used in our lives day to day, and cleaning up all that stuff. Just remember, anything that you're rubbing on your skin is absorbed and has to be detoxed. And that includes on your food, pesticides that you're eating or herbicides from non-organic produce and factory farm meat. Those are all huge. They have a huge impact. And then of course, people are just like popping pain relievers and, drinking alcohol and using over-the-counter drugs, and all of those kind of really add up and your body has this, total load threshold. And when that's exceeded, then these toxins back up into your system, and that's when problems start.
Yeah, those are some really, really good points. Now, on top of that, you talked about the master cleanse. I think you were dropping a serious big knowledge bomb back there. Like that's like blasphemy in the detox world. Can you go more into the master cleanse, if you will, and just talk about kind of what your take on it is?
Yeah, the master cleanse is very polarizing. Some people are like, they get super upset if you talk badly about the master cleanse, but the idea is that you drink this, lemon water, which, in and of itself, hot water with lemon can be a great detoxifying agent.
Yeah.
It like stimulates peristalsis, and it really does kind of help bile production.
Yeah. It's very alkaline too, very alkalizing.
Totally alkalizing, yeah. So this master cleanse, they drink that and cayenne pepper, which can be thermogenic and help boost fat burning and increase circulation, and maple syrup and sometimes Epsom salts or something maybe. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But, if you're drinking this 6-7 times a day, again, like I was saying earlier, if you have underlying kind of health issues you're not aware of, or if you have a tendency to hypoglycemia, you're going to really crash and burn. And people are doing this mostly, in my experience, when I've worked with clients or taught these workshops. It's not that people really care so much about, being healthy or cleansing their liver specifically. They just want to lose weight. So
exactly.
You are going to lose weight, but you're mostly losing muscle mass. You're not burning fat when you're doing the master cleanse. So, it can really have detrimental effects on some, and people will be like, oh, but I felt amazing. And, I think that's kind of a false sense of your body's being stressed out and you're kind of running on adrenaline for a few days.
Yeah,
and
it's very addicting to be running on adrenaline. It feels good.
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, that's some scary stuff. And some of these cleanses that people are buying at the store, they have like really harsh laxative stimulant herbs. So they're just pooping all the time, and they're like, oh, I'm cleansing, I'm on the toilet all day. But really, that's not focusing on liver support at all. You're just pooping a lot, so.
Right. And I find with my patients, or just people in general, the main benefit that people get from doing a master cleanse is they're cutting out food allergens. Right?
Oh, yeah.
There's no proteins in their diet.
Exactly, yeah.
So they're just getting a total break from eggs and beef and chicken, even foods that are paleo, but they're just getting a break from it, and their immune system kind of de-stresses, right? That's
a really excellent point. And a lot of people, if they are feeling really poorly going into it and they're having a lot of digestive issues, then and that's where people get confused too, is that it's hard for them to determine if they have a food allergy, or if they're just not digesting foods that they're eating well because their digestive system isn't working and they're not producing enough enzymes or hydrochloric acid. And then they remove all those foods, or they remove all food, and they're like, oh, I feel amazing. And it's probably because you're, like you said, they're removing allergens or food that they're not digesting well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And also, I want you to touch upon our cytochrome P450 oxidase pathways, phase 1, phase 2, some people say phase 3. I want you to touch upon that, because if I remember correctly from school, it takes protein and amino acids to run those pathways. So you look at the master cleanse, you're like, wait a minute, there's no amino acids coming in. So how does that actually run our detoxification? So can you go down and talk about our detoxification pathways?
Oh yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because I think I even mentioned that on my website is that, when people are just doing these kind of raw vegan cleanses or whatever, like you said, your body synthesizes these potent detoxifier, these detoxifying agents like glutathione, for instance, through protein, by breaking down protein into amino acids, and then the liver synthesizes these really potent, N-acetylcysteine and glutathione specifically, antioxidants that it uses to boost detoxification. And if you're deficient in those, you're not going to be detoxing. And that's why, in a lot of these combination herbal products or nutrients, they, contain a lot of these amino acids and glutathione and acetylcysteine specifically. And, so many people are deficient in those because, again, if they're vegetarians or they're not eating much protein or they're not digesting or breaking down these proteins, then, that's one way that you're shortchanging your liver and you're not getting your full detox capacity met.
That's really important. I want to just underline one thing you said for the listeners. Glutathione are master antioxidants made from protein, cysteine, glutamine, and glycine. So I think that's really, really important. So in your detoxification program, do you have some type of general detoxification support that's amino acid based to help push that phase 1 and phase 2 pathway?
Yeah, totally. So I give people options. They can remove the foods that I suggest, and there's protein involved. And then if they want to use the supplements, there's a lot of really great functional food kind of smoothie mixes out there that can be used for detox programs. And a lot of them, we were talking about heavy metals earlier too. A lot of them can help chelate some heavy metals out of the body. And there's from any of these companies that, we use, like Designs for Health, and some of these companies they've already put together, packets that have antioxidants and the herbs in them, and then the vitamins and minerals you need for detox and the amino acids. Right. And Designs for Health has one just called Amino Detox, which is just full of amino acids. So it's really easy to find, these little detox support packets that you can use alongside your cleanse. And that's when you're really kind of, the food part is great to address, of course. But if you're also doing the supplemental support and getting fiber and making sure, that you're pooping regularly, then you have kind of the full spectrum in place there.
Very interesting. So if I'm a patient and I want to work with you and I want to do a really good cleanse, let's say my diet's already good. Mm-hmm. How would we work together doing this cleanse? How do we move forward?
Yeah, well, again, if you're working with me or a practitioner, then you can really personalize it based on what your particular health concerns are. And sometimes I know you use that organics profile probably in your practice for metametrics, and this is a really cool test because it gives you an idea of exactly, if your detox pathways are congested, it'll tell you specifically what imbalances you have. So sometimes I will recommend that to see exactly, what's going on or working with in terms of any deficiencies or there's, that test can kind of reveal if you have SIBO issues or some gut stuff going on. Because a lot of times people, think they want to detox because they're like, oh, I'm tired and I'm bloated and et cetera. But really, maybe they need more specialized gut work and maybe do the gut works first and then the detox. So it really, again, kind of depends on the person. And then you can, recommend any testing that might reveal some underlying issues going on and then kind of really personalize it based on what they need.
Got it. So you have like your general support and then you'd like customize it based off of some lab testing as well to see kind of what pathways maybe aren't working. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Or, if I kind of flag them as being a potential digestive case, then, recommend some stool testing alongside the organics profile and see exactly what's going on. And then, maybe detox isn't the place to start. Maybe that's a little bit farther down the road until you clean up the gut, or maybe they need to detox and then clean up the gut. It really depends on what's going on.
Yeah. And just for the listeners at home, organic acid testing is this new cutting edge testing that involves looking at these metabolites in our body. And essentially, if we have metabolite A, it gets converted to metabolite B. We know there's certain nutrients that are required to help make that A to B conversion. And if we see a whole lot of A and a small amount of B, then we're basically indirectly knowing that the nutrients that convert A to B are low. And so we're able to come in there and we can look at all the different pathways that our body needs to detoxify, and we can really customize things. And that's kind of what Mary's talking about and how she customizes her detoxification programs.
Yeah, I love that test. It's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, talk to me about some of your favorite herbs to use when you detoxify patients.
There's a lot of combinations out there. There are tinctures as well.
Mm,
And sometimes if, someone's not digesting food well, then liquid herbal tinctures are the way to go. But
mm,
you'll see combination herbal formulas with like Oregon grapefruit, and milk
right.
thistle, of course, is a really great antioxidant. It has some liver healing capacity. Those two are my favorite. And then you'll find like burdock root
Right.
or ginger sometimes. But what's interesting is some of those herbs are kind of more liver protective and liver regenerative, and some of them
Mm,
actually help the cleansing process and help to actually strengthen detox. So a lot of people are just buying milk thistle because they've heard that it's really great for detox, but milk thistle actually isn't the best detox support. It's incredibly good and healing for the liver, but if you combine it with some of these other herbs, then you get kind of the liver protective, regenerative, and kind of the detoxing herbs.
mm. Very interesting.
Well,
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit away from detoxification.
mhm.
Now, because you work with so many patients, tell me about the three biggest mistakes most patients, and let's say they're paleo literate. Let's say they already know about paleo, they've already studied it, they're maybe already doing some paleo things like cutting gluten out of their diet and such. What are the three biggest mistakes you're seeing with patients?
Oh, this is a good one. This is a fun topic. Well, number one, like I said earlier, is always sleep. It's
Yes.
so incredibly rare that I find someone who is either sleeping well or sleeping enough or has good sleeping habits. And my podcast partner, Caitlin, Grassfed Girl, and I have done several podcasts just on sleep alone and good sleep hygiene. And people are sleeping with their iPhones next to their head and sleeping with their Wi-Fi routers next to their head and with the TV on, and there's street noise and their rooms aren't dark or they're staying up too late, et cetera. And that really alters, your circadian rhythm. It alters your adrenal function, and it affects your cortisol levels. And that's we're just now reading a lot about how lack of sleep really contributes to weight gain and causes a lot of hormone imbalance. So that's a huge one. And people, you'll still tell them, listen, we really got to work on sleep, and they still really don't believe you. So they're still kind of, it takes some and then some people are really relieved and finally like, wow, okay, great, I have permission to get more sleep. But the other big one is especially with the paleo community. This is really, really common. I get this a lot. Is I'll have women, especially. It seems to be really more predominantly women, but they'll say, "Oh, my neighbor lost, 50 pounds doing paleo, and I've gained 20 pounds. What's going on?" And
Oh yeah, I
usually,
hear that a lot.
yeah, and then they're completely baffled because they've read all of these amazing testimonials for paleo online and how it's this panacea, it cures everything. Or GI issues too. I hear that a lot. But oftentimes, again, like I was saying earlier, there's never a one size fits all approach. So like your neighbor's paleo diet isn't going to be your paleo diet, and oftentimes they're just eating too much of a particular macronutrient for them. They're eating tons of meat or maybe too much fat for their particular physiology, or if they're not digesting it well, that can be another issue. And I still tell people, we need a lot of plants, and obviously there are exceptions to that. Again, sometimes too much fiber can be irritating to people if they have gut problems,
Mm,
but it's usually, and they're crossfitting, they're working out really intensely, and that can be an issue too. If they have hormonal imbalances and severe adrenal fatigue and they're crossfitting themselves to death, then you're going to have some weight loss resistance issues too. So sometimes, people aren't exercising. Sometimes they're exercising too much, or they're not sleeping enough, or they might be eating paleo, but they're just not they haven't adjusted their particular macronutrient ratios, or they're eating like super low carb. They're not getting enough carbohydrates, and that can actually affect hormone balance. And especially for women, like I was saying, women seem to be, women have really delicate endocrine systems. So,
mm.
if they're eating way too low carb, then that can prevent weight loss and contribute to some hormone imbalances too, especially seemingly thyroid related.
Yeah, and talk to me about going too low carb. Now, how are you customizing the macronutrients? Because I see some people that they do really well
Yeah.
going low carb, but others don't. So how are you customizing that? How are you looking into adjusting it?
Well, yeah, and another thing is that's kind of hot right now is everyone wants to try a ketogenic diets. And again, some people that seems to work really well with people who have like 50 or more pounds of weight to lose. And that, as you know, is kind of low protein and high fat and really low
Yeah.
carb. But I have everyone, and it's kind of a pain, but it's really useful information for everyone to track, exactly what they're eating every day and get their kind of macronutrient ratio breakdown and see, okay, well, I'm only getting 10% of my calories from carbohydrates, and that's really low. That might be too low for some people. So you can. I mean, it's really kind of, it takes all the fun out of eating, basically, to have to like count your carbs and track your percentages of how much protein, fat, and carb are you getting. But I have people do that at least for a little while just to get a ballpark. Um, but most people, I think, for weight loss tend to do well with under 100 grams of carbohydrate. And then again, it totally depends on the person and if they're working to resolve some hormone imbalances or other issues going on. And then again, this with the ketogenic diet, that's everyone's kind of hopping on that bandwagon right now. Like I said, for some reason it seems like people with not very much weight to lose don't do well on that. It can really make them feel poorly, and people with a lot of weight to lose seem to do well. What's been your experience with that, working with people?
Yeah, I mean, I see men always tend to do very well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then some women will come in and they won't do as well. And there's typically an underlying thyroid or female hormone issue that tends to
yeah.
need to be addressed. And then also, I think people get the wrong mindset. They're under the impression that, all right, well, we're gonna lose weight because then we get healthy. And
Oh, yeah,
I
exactly.
think the causality is reversed, is you get healthy, then you lose weight. And women, they just have this beautiful, intricate cycle that's kind of like a symphony that's up and down, where
Yeah.
men just constantly have this straight line of like, and it's a straight hormonal line throughout the month hormonally, and then women have this symphony going on. So if you just take off one instrument out of the symphony or time it up wrong, that symphony just sounds like noise. Where like men just have this foghorn going the whole month. So definitely, that's one of the big things I see, the hormones.
Yeah, that's a really great point too, because as you know, I know you specialize in working with Hashimoto's and hypothyroid
Yeah.
cases. I mean, it's another thing that really gets me is that I will ask every woman who, is either struggling with weight loss or if I suspect hormone imbalance, when have you had blood work done? And they will always say, oh, my lab work is normal. My lab work is normal. But you look at the lab work and, there's a huge range for your TSH, which is, what doctors use to
Oh
primarily
yeah.
diagnose. And if let's say that their TSH is 4, that's not flagged as abnormal on a lab test. And as there's an ideal range, and then there's this huge range on the lab test. And so you get a lot of people who are like kind of, they're flying under the radar, and they have, T4, T3, TSH imbalances going on. And that's when, you want to do the more sophisticated panels. And sometimes I send those people to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But,
and it gets even more. You want to scratch your head even more because you can take a blood test on the East Coast, and your TSH is 5, and you're considered normal because 5.5 is the normal for the East Coast, and then you go to the West Coast, and then it's 4.5, and now you're suddenly
yeah.
hypothyroid. So I say the easiest cure for hypothyroid is just a plane flight. Just go from the West Coast to the East Coast.
That's pretty awesome. And the worst thing is that then, they give you Synthroid and send you on your way. And then those are the other people I get, is they say, I've been taking Synthroid and absolutely nothing's happened. And I don't feel any better, but my lab work is great. And, that's because it's either a Hashimoto's situation going on, and then it's not your thyroid's fault. It's an immune system issue.
Right.
And they just, I don't want to talk badly about our conventional medical system, because obviously it has its immense strengths, but that's the one thing that gets me, is they really don't, I have these people who are so frustrated working with endocrinologists, and they never ask them how are they feeling. They just look at their lab work and send them on their way. And these people are still feeling really poorly, and they're not, they have autoimmune issues. And then they're told, oh, if you have autoimmune, it's still the same treatment,
Right. Right. And then like the assumption that we can look at a brain hormone, i.e. TSH, and then we can make this general assumption that this is the same thing as thyroid hormone? Well, we can just test thyroid hormone and we can be very accurate that way. We can look at T3 and T4 free in total, but we'll just look at the brain hormone and we'll just base everything off of that one test, even though it's totally indirect.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have a lot of people too who they'll have a full thyroid panel in hand, and it says that they, have their antibodies are really high, which indicates Hashimoto's, and no one has told them that. And they'll say, well, no, my endocrinologist never said anything, or my doctor never said anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And, they've been walking around with Hashimoto's and it's not been addressed, and it's just, kind of baffling.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for anyone listening, like the training that I've had, the training that you've had, this isn't training that's available to people in the conventional mainstream medical school setting. You really have to go outside kind of the conventional scope. You have to go study from doctors that have been in the trenches for decades, and you take classes with people that are already doing this. It's not something that's in the conventional setting. So I think a lot of people just think, oh, well, my doctor went to this medical school or that medical school. These things aren't being taught. It's so cutting edge. And for the most part, anything a doctor is learning in medical schools is about 20 or 30 years old. It's very outdated. Most of what a doctor learns is clinical or in their residency. But I think that's an important assumption that people really need to readjust that.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And, they only have maybe one section that they need to require for nutrition. And so, your endocrinologist is never going to ask you what you're eating. And many times your doctor isn't either, or they have such ancient information about, what you should be eating for health. And it's still kind of the low fat dogma and exercise more and eat less fat or whatever they're saying. But yeah, I mean, that's why this holistic health community and alternative medicine is really, our whole goal here is to find the root cause as well, and not just, keep treating symptoms.
Yeah. And I spoke with a Stanford physician recently, and, Stanford's probably in the top 10 for medical schools in the US. I mean, it's pretty renowned. And I asked her about her nutrition training while in school, and she had to take, I think, a 2-credit class, and it was online, and you didn't even have to show up. You could just take the test at the end, and that was your nutrition class. And it's oh my gosh, like how can this doctor who just studies the notes at the end, takes a test, how are they going to have the same kind of knowledge that you spent thousands of hours, I imagine, in your nutrition program over at the school you went to? How can they compare?
Well, and the other thing that I just don't understand is people really, I mean, disease just doesn't, I mean, in the majority of cases, right? In the majority of cases, disease doesn't just kind of spontaneously occur. There are 1,000 factors that go into this. And the biggest one, I think, one of the biggest ones is what you're eating and what you're putting in your mouth every day. And, that's going to also impact your stress levels and inflammation. And we know stress and inflammation are kind of the first parts of imbalance that occur. Yes. And, I don't understand why we're still going along and that connection is not really being addressed in the conventional medical world.
Well, I know hundreds of people are finding your website and reading your blogs and checking out your podcast and buying your products. So people are, I think, slowly changing. It's just a matter of time for, they see 5, 10 doctors and, it's all in their head, or if their hormones are out of balance, here's some birth control pills, or here's an antidepressant, or you're just getting older. Don't you love that one?
Oh my gosh.
Just getting older.
Oh, I know you, I'm sure, get tons of people who, I feel so bad for these people. They've been through the ringer with like GI doctors and endoscopies and colonoscopies, and they've had biopsies, and they say, yeah, they just gave me an IBS diagnosis because they can't find anything wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then they send them on their way, and the reason they need that diagnosis is just so they can prescribe drugs and obviously the drugs aren't necessarily going to heal the disease or the underlying cause, but at least the person will be able to function. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's something going on, and that's what they'll say. Well, maybe you should consider an antidepressant.
Yes, exactly. And I was watching House MD. I'm just starting the show. The show's been out for like 10 years, but I got Netflix and I get to go through, just back to back to back. You kind of go on like your weekend binge of whatever show you're checking out. But in that show, it's the epitome because one, there was like 2 really cool things that happened. I won't, if you haven't seen the episode, spoiler alert, but the girl that has the brain issue, it's a parasite. Oh my gosh. I couldn't believe it because conventional medicine, their parasites only exist in the third world. So it was a parasite and it fixed her. But number two, the other guy that comes in that's having all the problems, the fatigue, the soreness, and he's like, oh, it's fibromyalgia, it's chronic fatigue. Well, he goes out and he gets these M&Ms, candies that didn't have like any, they were just kind of bland looking, put them in a bottle and just said they were medication and was like, here you go. So basically the message is if you're fatigued, if you're in pain, if you're tired, it's all in your head. And then at the very end, he comes back wanting his prescription refilled, basically proving that he's right. It's all in our heads. But you go in the scientific literature, right? Low thyroid, adrenal fatigue, and gut infections can cause chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. So it just kind of supports exactly what you're saying.
Well, yeah, and our system is kind of a disease-based model and not a preventive-based model. So those are the people that are flying under the radar because they have these kind of subclinical imbalances or things, going on that aren't serious enough to prescribe drugs for or be detected. And then that's how actual real more serious diseases take hold if you don't kind of focus on these little underlying imbalances first.
Yeah, I totally agree. Can you tell me more about like who is your ideal patient? Like who are the people that are coming to see you from all over the world?
I specialize in women's health and hormone balance. So I see a lot of digestive cases. And I do like those cases because those, like I was describing that person who's been to 5 different gastroenterologists and had so many different tests done and they still don't feel better because just even making a few dietary changes right away will give them relief while you're kind of working on healing the other stuff. So a lot of digestive wellness, and then like you, a lot of immune cases, Hashimoto's, hypothyroid, because those are always really satisfying cases to work with because people just feel so much better, and just educating them about what's going on with them that nobody has has told them about, and giving them a good protocol or trying an autoimmune diet. So it's mostly fertility, women's health and hormones, and digestive wellness, and then of course the detox piece too.
Got it. And you mentioned a lot of digestive issues with these female patients. What % of the people that are having these infections even have digestive symptoms?
Oh gosh, well, yeah, that's scary. Is that there are when you run these profiles, I mean, people or they don't really realize that what they're having are kind of nagging issues that they wouldn't even necessarily they think that's normal. They think that kind of burping a lot or feeling bloated at the end of the day or but some these food allergy symptoms and digestive issues manifest as different. Just being tired all the time could definitely indicate a GI problem as well. I mean, it totally depends on the person. So there's a lot to answer your question. Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't really have serious GI issues, but there's something going on in there, and they're not aware of it until you run a test.
Very interesting. And what's your experience with resistant starch been like? That's kind of like the big hoopla in the paleo community. So what's your experience? What's your experience?
That has really kind of taken off. And I've just started sort of researching it and reading about it. But, they obviously, the resistant starches resist digestion.
Right.
And so, I think that people are jumping on that bandwagon because they improves insulin sensitivity or can lower blood sugar levels. But I'm just kind of starting to do more research on that, and I think it can be really useful in a lot of people. So what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's been diagnostic for picking up SIBO.
Yeah.
I think some people do really well because it can increase butyric acid in the gut, and butyric acid is really beneficial at lowering the pH and preventing bad bacteria from growing, especially people that are on lower carbohydrate diets.
Mm-hmm.
There are these certain bacteria called Eubiome rectali or Roseburia bacteria, and when you go low carb, these things get like really obliterated. But if you do a little bit of resistant starch, even while you keep a low-carb diet, you can keep that beneficial bacteria up. So I think there's a lot of good benefits, especially if you're someone that goes super low-carb and you may get constipated. That's in my opinion, that's the reason why people may get constipated on low carb, either not in the veggies or that bacteria starts shifting in your colon.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that people are kind of using raw potato starch and
Yeah.
but yeah, so I definitely think that using it for a diagnostic tool is really valuable for SIBO. That is, and again, that kind of, we were talking earlier, I guess off air, about people are going into their doctors and getting tests for this stuff that's not showing up. And until you either run more sophisticated stool profiles or you're kind of doing these little experiments with their diet, and that's how things can really start to show up.
Yeah. And do you like potato starch over like plantains or over banana starch? What's your take on those?
Potato starch can actually kind of mess with certain people. And so I don't really use that one. I know that that's kind of a popular one. People are using Bob's Red Mill, I think, raw potato starch. But yeah, I'm more inclined to use kind of the ones you suggest, and not necessarily, that wouldn't be my go-to. But I know with a lot of the articles I've read, that's one of the main ones that's recommended. What have you seen with that?
Yeah, I've seen the same. Anyone who's autoimmune, I always just default to the banana or plantain.
Oh yeah, because that'll have some irritants for autoimmune issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get the alpha solanines in the potato, but some people are like, "Oh, but it mixes better." I'm like, "All right, well, as long as you're not autoimmune, then we can try it." So I always recommend getting both and see which one you gravitate towards. I gravitate towards the plantain though, or the unripened banana for sure.
Yeah, and they're also delicious.
Yeah, you can just mix them in with your shake too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, tell me about, this may be like a little bit off topic or maybe a little difficult for you to pull up the info. Tell me about your most popular blog post, because I know you're a big blogger in the blog. So what's like the things that are people that are coming to MaryVanceNC.com? What are they looking up?
So probably the biggest posts, the two biggest posts I can think of, well, three. The biggest one is on adrenal fatigue. And it's kind of healing a hormone imbalance. And I think I start off even in that post saying that, most doctors won't even address, if people go to their physicians and say, or their primary care doctors and say, God, I'm so tired, that's not even really recognized by the conventional medical system at all. That is a huge post. And then treating candida, yeast overgrowth. I get tons of hits on that blog post. And then just 10 really easy daily detox tips, because after you've done all this work and you've cleaned up your gut and you got your liver detox pathways running smoothly again, then you want to make sure. That's another huge question that I get asked is, how do I make sure my hormone levels don't tank again? Well, there's daily lifestyle habits that you can do to, just daily detox, like dry skin brushing, or we were talking about like the hot water with lemon, or including liver-friendly foods, sitting in a sauna, exercise, sweating. There's tons of ways that you can support your liver daily. And also, if you are working on healing hypothyroidism or hormone imbalances, just making sure your lifestyle factors are in place is the most critical factor. I mean, you can be doing everything right with taking your supplements every day and eating, but if you're staying up all night and chugging coffee, or, and your stress levels are through the roof, you're not going to get better.
Right. And on your site, you talk a lot about essential oils. I know you like the Young Living essential oil company. Can you tell me more about kind of like your take on essential oils and like the biggest three things that you would use them with in your life?
Yeah, I was thinking earlier when you were talking about your cat scratch infection that thieves oil.
Thieves, yep. I actually have doTERRA, so I would do On Guard, but yes.
Yeah, and you can put that actually directly on it too. I don't know if that would sting or not, but I really love using essential oils. My main caution that I like to tell people though is that I think that people are using a lot of these oils internally, and you need to be kind of careful with how you're using them internally, because we're still not sure exactly. There's a lot of evidence that peppermint, which is one of my favorites, you're asking about my favorites. Peppermint is one of my favorites because it, it's really uplifting and cooling, and it, can relieve headaches pretty instantly, and it can be very soothing for IBS type people. Then
Yeah.
there's evidence, though, it's because it's killing off, certain gut bacteria. And if someone has SIBO, for instance, and they have an overgrowth of, that's what SIBO is. It's basically bacteria in the wrong place and an overgrowth of what's not considered bad bacteria. It's just in the wrong place and there's too much of it. And, it can kill some of that off. And so we don't know necessarily if it's killing off good gut flora. So there's a lot of debate out there actually on whether or not oils are safe to ingest. And I think there are several that you can ingest safely, but I do caution people about, you can't take all these oils internally. But I'm a really big fan of some of these blends I have been really kind of focusing on a meditation practice, and there's a lot of them that have specific oils in them for to help deepen a meditation practice. There's one that Young Living has called the Grounding Blend and Believe, and they have like balsam in them and different kinds of frankincense, especially.
Yeah.
So I like those blends, and I love peppermint and lemon oil. Can be good for detox, and I love frankincense and myrrh too, because those are really great for your skin. So it's super fun to dabble with, and I think that diffusing them and inhaling them, it can really provide a lot of stress relief for people. And like I said, using them alongside a kind of yoga or meditation practice, and because they smell nice and they make you feel good. So
Yeah. What's your take on Valor? You like Valor?
Oh yeah, I love that one. That one is also super popular. I think they run out of it all the time, but people use that for kind of, self-esteem and confidence. And again, it smells awesome, but I've known a lot of people who use that to reduce anxiety. And so, yeah, I think that they can be a really good, you hear these kind of like amazing testimonials about essential oils all the time. I think they can be a really good kind of lifestyle habit to help people when they're kind of, working on healing, and they're natural. They're all plant-based. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
They're really strong. They work really well.
Very cool. So is there anything else that you would like the listeners to know about you, or anything on your radar screen that's really important to you right now?
Well, I would just say, if anyone wants to go to my website, like you said, maryvancenc.com, there's a ton of resources on there. And I've actually recently written about my meditation practice and what I've kind of done to help me be focused and grounded and centered. And there are all my popular posts listed, and you can download my ebook. So yeah, go on there and poke around. And it's not only just nutrition articles. It's obviously, with this holistic model, like I was saying, it's lifestyle, wellness, sleep, stress, exercise, emotional well-being, and there's recipes and just articles about nutrition on there too.
Very cool. Her name is Mary Vance. You can find her at www.maryvancenc.com. Feel free and check out her detox program. Also, if you need coaching, she's available as well. And also, Mary has a podcast called Health Nuts Podcast. They're on sabbatical right now while her counterpart finishes her book. But feel free to check out lots of great old episodes of really good interviews. And check out the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the good channels there. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Justin. Always fun to chat about this stuff.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com/question. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.